One. All right, my name is Curtis Burkle. I'm the solution engineer for Office1. Today we have joining me, my guest here is Chad, and he does IT for a local school here in Las Vegas that is not part of CCSD and has been in the IT industry for about 20 years and has taught himself, as well as being a teacher in classroom. So, Chad, I mean, what is your initial reaction when you saw this?
So this kind of stuff in any business, whether large scale or small scale, like in my case, we only had 400 in total users, and we still had a lot of uh, cyber attacks that we would have to mitigate that were definitely just phishing attacks or phishing bots that would be just sniffing for random packets to try to get into our system. So this is actually something I think we'll see frequently and more so frequently in the future. But whether in regards to, say, like this Wall Street Journal article, a county district this large having this big of a ransom attack, and for them not to actually consider paying it or how it even got to this point is actually quite fantastical, honestly, and not too shocking or surprising.
And I guess with the school districts in general, I mean, what do you see it as them not, having the bandwidth or the personnel, like the IT staff to, spend the time to update or upgrade their infrastructure, like patching and that sort of thing, and make sure their firewalls and doing testing? Or is it the other end where the budget just simply isn't there?
Okay, so with a like say with this large of an attack, this
30,
obviously
320,000 student record.
right that and this is interesting when you think, and it even says down here that we have things such as social security numbers. So this sounds like they got into what a system that is called Infinite Campus, but it's a system that holds all the records, holds all public school records, class records, and emergency contacts and henceforth. And so when something of that large gets compromised, that is going to be reflected upon it on the whole IT department for the district. That is a whole breach. That's not an isolated breach. That's definitely a full data compromise. And when you see something like this, you either have to wonder whether or not you would actually consider paying the ransom, which at that point you would say maybe it's going to already be leaked to uh, outside sources, or that's going to be saved somewhere where it could be potentially leaked in the future, anyways.
Right.
And so that becomes an ethical question on how you disclose how the data breach happened and such. And then that even comes into, just like you said, do you even have the staff or a staff trained in that measure to go in and do this? In my case, I kind of got into the position where we had prior issues in the network that needed updating, and in reference to a data
You talked to
breach.
me about that, where you pretty much, when the school brought you in, and you pretty much redid their whole network infrastructure with firewalls, access points, made sure that these things wouldn't happen to your school.
Yeah, Google, and that even goes into like Google Suite administrator and going into those kind of networks and making sure that they're actually cleaned up to date. And that kind of staffing and budgeting gets to the wayside very easily because it seems unjustifiable. It seems like this stuff should be automated by this point, or that this stuff should just naturally happen.
Right.
And then when a network goes down, you're immediately the bad guy because you did something when it could be the ISP. And you said it earlier about whether it's the bandwidth. And I'll be honest, in most generality, it's not the bandwidth, it's typically the network. The network's either bogged down, not up to date, the hardware's, and then that's going to be always almost like a back and forth is if you update your network, well, then your hardware might be out of date or not even sufficient to that network. So why did you update the network? Because it was insecure, and henceforth, so you can get into these back and forths. But then when we talk about something this large hitting this many people. And again, I know I showed you that this seems to happen a few times, but this seems to be an operation that, again, I don't think it's just school district specific, but in general, when you are dealing with children's information, the FERPA and COPA compliance that I know I've mentioned to you before prior is critical, because I'm a parent as well and I have children, and if those informations get exposed, I feel as my parental right to tell the district, well, what did you do to secure that? What measures were in place? And then that could go into things such as, well, are you going to allow the parents now to penetrate, test you for,
Right.
security for my own kids' information? Because obviously this is happening. We can see with this Wall Street Journal entry, this is obviously a big deal, even for such people as us here in Las Vegas, that this is a lot of
Yeah, this hit
information.
home for both of us. We both live, work here. Your kids
Yeah.
go to school here.
My kids are in Clark County, and so this is actually, we did just get emails from them and got information on it. And it's going to take one of those where, again, and I'm going to, if you see right here in my highlight, I'm going to have to highlight this. I know you said, but I'm going to have to bring it up. This right here is not a if I brought this to my board of directors, this one quote from their security, cybersecurity, if I said, oh, just they didn't do data stealing from last year to this year, then
That's a
I'm
complete
sorry.
lie.
That's a falsehood. Like I said, I could show, if I could open up any of the network panels and show you on a daily basis how many mitigated attacks are happening. And even if you open up one in your own local network, you'll be impressed on how many times just these simple sniffing bots are out there. And, we used to say, don't click on anything, don't do this and that. Now we're kind of, as a teaching aspect, what we like to tell the students now is you're a digital citizen. And
Okay.
digital citizenship is one that is, I can go, it is proper to teach these kids and even staff, students and staff. In the IT department, there isn't enough time to be able to go to each individual and say you need to update your password and it needs to be more secure.
No.
So on the staff end, if I can administrate more and do more to mitigate whether it's hardware administration through Google Suite, whether it's going in and doing network administration and doing DNS, and that will bring up a whole nother subject, that why this is important on the cybersecurity area is when they're saying, I guess, some districts have paid these ransoms, and you can see that this isn't going to go away.
Right.
Whether it's going in and actually doing a penetration test through an IT third party and getting them properly inundated to the network and methodology. The problem is how old the software is.
Yeah, what was
And
the name of the software you said the districts are using?
so I don't know the one that's in central U.S., but they use a different one. But it seems like most of the West Coast uses a software called Infinite Campus,
Okay.
a very simple SQL database written in old. It almost looks like old Microsoft Basic visuals. It's very
And
simple,
so,
very archaic.
so what did I know? What did you do at your school to make sure that they're up to date and secure? And then I think you told me that you guys even caught people trying to hack and they were unsuccessful because of what you guys implemented there.
Yes. So the first thing that I think is very important is being able to socially engineer the teachers to getting them to understanding not giving away the information. Whether it's a Wi-Fi password, because like a staff Wi-Fi, we would go in and we would say, well, you're bringing in your own hardware. We have a staff Wi-Fi. We have a student Wi-Fi. And what you can do on the staff Wi-Fi is different than the student. And, it's we do deep packet sniffing in the network that we won't do so much as to the staff.
Right.
Just, you're going on Facebook. We don't really want to know everything about your life on Facebook. But if a child is on Facebook and such, there could be child
That's why you
predators.
guys have like filters and stuff in place to make sure they can't access like social media stuff on the student network.
Absolutely, and also taking off any of the um, more of the filtered stuff, because you look at how quick it is. We want to teach these kids to utilize the tool of search and getting into those things, but as fast as that is, that's when, such as myself, having these programs mitigate things. There's two programs in particular we like to use, is called Bark and Go Guardian, and I know CCSD even updated this one that got compromised, just started using this. And this could even translate to things that I was saying that goes into how much further could this be than just a data compromise?
Right.
How could this be an actual bot on the network at an administration level, and it's
They wouldn't
happening
know.
over
Their
here?
stuff is ancient.
Right. And I'm going to say, so when you were asking me what's my first thing I wanted to do when I walked into my district, and what I wanted to do was to take it apart piece by piece and see what's the easiest way to compromise, is always going to be uh, right there on site. It's
The end users too, like
Yes,
right, the teachers, the
yes.
students sending an
The
email.
teachers, students, staff, yep, the people on site daily, day in and day out, and getting them used to the practice of, whether it's just certificated networking, like with the staff, I would just be like, look, we're going to put this won't make sense to you, but we're going to go on there, we're going to sign on, we're going to put a certificate on, and you'll never have to sign on again, and you're going to be good. And and they would go, okay, wow, cool. And, we'd do it. And then somehow, they either reset their computer and I'd have to go on and put the certificate on again, and hence. And so it'd be simple things like that. And so again, you do have to justify these things to a board. And the
Right.
board of directors isn't in the day in and day out. They're not there putting in a password just to turn on a TV. They're not there resetting a Chromebook and just, doing the management
They don't
side.
understand the operations side of it. They don't know
Right,
what's going on.
right. The real, like, the printer broke and I got to reset the printer. That's going to take me 10 minutes. I got, and then and even saying I got to set up IP addresses and DNSs and stuff. It's going to be talking above their common decor of what's going to happen on the day. And, how are the students doing? How are the students getting the information? Is their
Right.
network there? And then it's now these days, again, that we're looking at remote learning, and we're looking at just a data compromise, but is it even further now? Are they compromising other things? Is there other means that
And
they're going in?
I'm sure this stuff. I think that this guy, if you scroll up, did he say that he did find it on the dark web? That he literally found all. Like I think in the second part of his quote, he did say somewhere along the line that he did. Yep, look at that. Who said he was able to easily access the Clark County data on a hacker website? I mean, think about it. This is your children's first, last name, social security number, address,
Multiple records.
where that is.
Yes, we're, like I said, this stuff has to be FERPA and COPA compliant, and that is, like I said, we're looking at federal abuses here of data. And so, was the person that was in charge of the data actually certified and capable of doing so? And here's where it gets really fishy, because in technology and in this industry, that we don't, it's not that we don't have certification levels, but we don't have what I would say is a proper means of saying we did an authentic
There's no
penetration test.
standard. There's no SOP or like standard operating procedure how to like do everything, for the district or how people are like onboarded or offboarded or the security side of it. There's no like something that's been implemented or streamlined across all the schools. So that way, like your school now, since you've been there, you got all the firewalls updated. You got everything, you know how your
Right.
infrastructure is there. It's secure. Where this district, they don't have a clue.
Well, and that goes into, like you said, budget and talent worth, and you're going to look at things that are, you could have the most talented person, but if he's taking 10 to 15 minutes to reset a printer, he may not be able to allocate his
Well,
time, or their time, sorry, their time
I don't know how many schools are here in the district, but they only have like a handful of people. And like you said, if all of them are dealing with printing issues or my email isn't working issues, you're not really leveraging their experience to where it should be used.
Well, login, even we're talking even as simple as login issues, okay?
Yep.
And so we're getting at rudimentary things that are commonality, standards that we would say at this point, let's just mitigate this with automated things, whether it's certificated, whether it's literally giving kids little, NFC stamps on their IDs so that when they log on, they can just log in through
Yep. I know
NFC.
a school in San Diego that did that.
So and now you look at QR coding, even in the sense of what we can do with QR coding and doing all this. So there's a lot of ways to do this, and what would ever work for or tailored to that industry. But again, even in the sense of how far it would say, why would these districts pay this much money? And why would they look at, when you think like, hey, we have districts that are paying for these ransoms well over the rate, these range. Why wouldn't they justify this on the other end? Like I said, whether it's hardware and network, it's not just the network, it's not
Yeah.
just the hardware, it's got to be both parallel for a security side. And whether that's making sure it's just the admins are just at that level and making sure the administrators and justifying that level and getting the staff there and saying, yeah, we're going to have a loose end with the students because they got to go home and we're going to let them take these Chromebooks home. And that's where we
Yeah.
may mitigate it with something like a Go Guardian or a better software package that's going to do a little more in-depth automated reporting for us. So the automated reporting to any IT staff or system
Yeah.
administrator is huge. But going into again, such it's saying that to justify this much money for a ransom, but not to actually
I
take
mean, if
that.
you think about it, you're looking at less than $1 per student because I think there's like 350,000, records or students were. That's less than $1 a student.
Yep, yep,
So,
absolutely.
we're going almost 20 minutes here already. At very high level, um, you know, very very high level. Real quick, just some final thoughts on, you know, just final thoughts, I guess, on, you know, the hack itself and what schools should be doing. Um, real fast to make sure that they don't, and like what you've done at yours.
So, very quickly, the two things that I think are critical is making sure and understanding that the data that is being managed, it needs to be done appropriately. So, and whether that be in the means of having the third party come in and make sure that it's tested thoroughly, or whether it's having and hiring the proper staff and onboarding process, those things have to be diligently brought up at the level of
I
boards
agree.
and to the point of administration being involved and having that um, authority to do and instigate those opportunities. But the other thing I can just say is with a compromise this big is you have to have the actual diligency to worry about where that information is going, who that information is going to, and that on the other side of the IT department is just as scary, knowing how many times I've either had to inform an administrator that there's maybe a student wanting to harm themselves, or even a student being an approaching adults that may
Right.
be predators. So that is real and needs to still be considered when we're doing this IT data
Yep.
management
And I
and
think
where.
this will open the eyes to parents a lot more, asking, hey, is their stuff going to be, hacked, or is my information or my kids' information going to get leaked? And they need to hold these schools accountable, these districts accountable to ensure that their childs are not only safe in a physical form, but also digitally as well.
Yes, perfectly stated is making sure on just as much being safe at the on location as much their data and their Correct.
Thank you,
Yes.
Chad, for taking the time for doing this. I know you got kids that are doing homeschool right now, and you got something else to
Right
do.
now, absolutely.
So thanks a lot,
Precious.
man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.